I think our life is so much bigger than acting. And I think that's kind of something that helps me with every choice that I'm making. Is I personally feel happier when acting isn't 99% of my life. You know, when my happiness doesn't depend on whether or not I book a job. Like, we have to find happiness within us whether or not we ever work again.
If you're a professional actor challenged by an increasingly fragmented industry, then this podcast is for you. The Hollywood Actor Podcast is an anthology made up of the stories of actors building their bodies of work by redefining themselves, reframing their goals, and reevaluating their opportunities. No matter where we are in our careers, we're always looking to be inspired and to share ourselves across our community. This podcast will offer that opportunity to guests and listeners alike, as we all discover what it means to be a working, professional, successful actor. This is Jamie Young, and you're listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. Today's guest is Lilly Englert. Lilly and I studied at the Stella Adler Conservatory in New York City. Her credits include the off-Broadway play Punk Rock 2014, directed by Trip Cullman, the off-Broadway play A Midsummer Night's Dream 2013, directed by Julie Taymor, and ABC's Quantico. You can catch her on the upcoming film Little Women, directed by Greta Gerwig, in theaters Christmas 2019, and make sure to follow Lilly on IMDb and as @Lilly Englert on Instagram. Now please welcome Hollywood actor Lilly Englert.
I trained at Stella Adler. I never imagined that I would have ended up training in America. I was living in Italy, like, as a teenager. I was in my last year of science high school, and I'd done a summer course at RADA, which was absolutely amazing, kind of made me want to become an actress. So I thought I would audition for RADA and then hopefully, get into RADA and then work in London. And I started the audition process, and I got to the 4th round of auditions, and then I didn't get in. And it was just utterly heartbreaking for me. And I think because also I was living in Italy and there was kind of no theatre, and like the acting world was kind of so foreign to me. I did just think that I would get in. Like, I never really had a plan B. I just thought I would get into RADA, and that, that would kind of be my training. And so then when I didn't get in, I had to kind of reassess my whole life, and I decided to move to Rome. And I went to a university called La Sapienza, and I was studying philosophy, but I was really unhappy. I knew I wanted to be acting. And then I started to research some American drama schools, and I stumbled across Stella Adler, and I really liked kind of her technique, and I thought it looked interesting, and I thought it would be really cool to spend some time in New York. And so I decided to come over and audition for Stella, kind of as my plan B. And it's actually crazy, like, looking at my life now, how different things would have been if I would have got into RADA, Like, none of this would have happened. Even, I wouldn't be married to the man I'm married to, or I wouldn't have this same group of friends, or it would be a totally different life. So I guess it worked out for the better. But so as a plan B, I was Stella Adler, and then I got in, and I thought I think the teachers at Stella are incredible. I think there's no, I don't think there's one way to get into acting. I think some people think that training is, utterly necessary, and some people just kind of have a raw talent that in a way it's better to not mess with that. There's something so raw about them that in a way you don't want to sculpt them into anything. You just kind of want to leave them be. But I think for me, I did need training. Like I had a lot of emotions and a lot of kind of energy, but I didn't really know where to direct it or how to how to kind of use any of the things that I had, and so for me I think it was very, very important. We had incredible teachers. I mean, from Jimmy Tripp to Angela to Bernard Cummings in the first year. He was incredible, and I think first of all you just get to act every single day for 3 years, which is something you don't really get to do when you start working as a professional actor, and you get to play roles which you probably are never going to play in the real world, and that's really, that's exciting. You get to take on challenges and just keep growing as an actor and keep practicing. And I think there is something that, like, we can become a little stale, like if we don't keep practicing, like if we don't keep tuning the muscle. And then of course we had workshops with like Andrew Wade and Jeffrey Horowitz, and they were just mind opening. And I've worked since with Andrew and Jeffrey, and it's kind of amazing how it's Stella is also connected to the theatre world.
For me, it was an equally intense and it was an equally intense and eclectic mix for me as well. Going from Bernard, like you said, to Sam Schacht, to Jimmy Tripp, and having these different teachers that had vastly different experiences on stage or in Hollywood films or were part of academia. And it really helped me challenge a lot of my energy as well, and learn that there are so many different paths to this artistically. And what I've been coming to learn recently is there's so many paths to be taken within the business, and how to apply our training to the business is something that I think is going to be a career-long challenge.
Right. Yeah, of course. It's a whole other, the business is a whole other beast, for sure. And learning how to navigate that is definitely a whole other skill set. I mean, there are people who it comes very naturally to, who are just hustlers and don't mind writing 200 emails to managers or agents and getting maybe one response if you're lucky. And there are people who believe in something else, like I don't know, that you trust things and you'll get to where you're supposed to be. Like, that's another type of philosophy that you can't. I mean, I am a strong believer that you can't muscle things into place. You can't force things. You can't try and just push and push and push. Like, that's not really the way that you'll get the best response. I think it's always better in a way to make people want to come to you, and whether that's writing an amazing web series and winning best actor in the web series, and then every agent wants to meet with you, that is a lot more powerful than sending 100 emails, and it's also a much more creative way of using your time. So I think there's everyone has their own way. my advice from kind of seeing a lot of my friends do this is write a web series and star in it and see what happens, and submit the web series and see what happens. I have friends who are with, Gersh and Innovative and kind of top agencies after having done that, and it does seem to work.
There's so many mediums we can pursue now that finding out what is your saleable talent, what sets you apart from the rest, and what you enjoy can be a lot of work in and of itself. I always like coming back to the quote of Steve Martin, right? He says, be so good that people can't ignore you.
Right, yes. And that's basically what I'm saying. I think make people come to you. Totally. He summed it up in a quote. Yeah.
I know, I like it because it's just that one idea that you can hold on to, but it's still a very complicated idea. What are you good at, and how do you market that? How do you place yourself within a myriad of products? And we only have a certain amount of resources, so you do have to focus on one product and focus on your specific talents. And you can make a web series, but maybe you end up writing it, and you find out that writing's more enjoyable to you, and the series takes off, but you say, look, I'd rather have a literary agent than a theatrical agent at this point in my career.
I mean, I think it's so important to do something that you enjoy, and if you're going to make something, it has to be something that you love, and it's going to be fun and creatively stimulating, and something that fulfills you. Like, I think of course, getting an agent or a manager is one of the end goals, but in a way you have to kind of trick your mind to not think about that. You have to trick your mind that you're doing it because you enjoy the creative process, and then good things will come from that.
That's what's going to serve you in your career. I think the agent, the manager that helps you plug in a little bit more to the formal industry, and that's important for us to be building a career, but it's not necessarily going to be nourishing us artistically.
No, absolutely.
But finding those people that help us plug into the formal industry is something that's very vital, and hopefully that happens through us putting out good work into the world. Like, for example, us being at Adler, and then Jeffrey Horowitz comes in, and you were able to work off-Broadway. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, when we were in our third year, I remember that I just got an email from Jeffrey saying that they were doing Midsummer Night's Dream at Theatre for a New Audience, and Julie Taymor would be directing the production, and they were looking to go very young with Hermia, and if I would like to audition. And of course, I was like a dream email to get, and I started the audition process, and I think it was like 3 or 4 auditions later I got the job. And that was, it was something that I never would have expected. It was, it just happened that everything kind of lined up. He was teaching this class. They were looking to go very young for Hermia. I think I was like 22 or 23 at the time, but I looked even younger, and it just worked for the role. So I think a huge part of that was also luck, though. It was just being at the right place at the right time, and a lot of it was luck. And then, of course, working incredibly hard for the audition, and I think that was a time of my life when I had been studying a lot of Shakespeare with Jimmy, and then as well with Jeffrey. He was doing the workshops with us. I think today if I have a Shakespeare audition, it's a lot harder for me to prepare because the muscle is a little more rusty than it used to be. And, I don't have the same vocal strength as I used to. I do a lot more film and television's auditions, and I've started working more in film and television, and it's definitely something that you have to keep up. And then after that, so I ended up, I booked the role, and then everything kind of started happening from that. I started working with an agency. I started working with ICM. kind of straight off the bat. And we started rehearsing, and then I auditioned for King Lear that they were also doing at Theatre for a New Audience, and Aaron Arbus was directing, who's an incredible director. She's actually making her Broadway debut in April, and I auditioned to play Cordelia, and I ended up getting that as well. So suddenly I had kind of these 8 months of work lined up, and it was very exciting, but I was working with this big agency, and I think they wanted me to do more film and television, and at the time I just kind of wanted to do theatre, and I wanted to do Shakespeare, and I thought this was an amazing opportunity. And so I think that it was harder when I finished King Lear and I didn't have another play lined up. It was very challenging for me to start auditioning for film and television. I feel like my auditions were just a disaster at the beginning. Like, I felt like they were very theatrical, and it was very pushed, and I never felt like we did enough film and television training at Stella Adler. And so I really did feel like I was kind of way out of, like, really in deep water trying to kind of navigate these film and television auditions. So that was definitely a challenge for me. It was like a challenging 6 months. And then I ended up getting another off-Broadway play called Punk Rock that Simon Stevens wrote and Trip Coleman directed. And that's probably been a highlight of my career for sure. That was a play about a school shooting, but the cast was 6 kids who were my age, and we were just playing together kind of every night and telling this very tragic story, but it was just so much fun. I mean, it felt like being at school, like, all over, you know? It was such an incredible experience, and something that I don't think will happen again. To be playing with so many talented actors who are kind of the same age as you, and to be telling such a relevant, kind of horrific, provocative story, I just felt so lucky to be doing it.
Well, you can always hope, and we can cherish those moments. I know they're few and far between, but I think we really need to try to absorb them in the moment and reflect on them as they continue to inspire us to be within those types of situations. I know we have to kind of push on the doors that open for us, but if you see another situation like that and you say, I wonder if, not recapture the magic, but if you can see that situation and almost predict a little bit how it may unfold, and you can say, and I think a lot of us try to say, that's the kind of situation I want to be in. Maybe even that's the kind of actor I want to be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and to have, older actors as well who inspire you, and who you can look at their careers and say, okay, that's the kind of career that I want, and to not be afraid to think that,
That's what I've experienced doing a lot of equity plays with these older theater stalwarts. Respect the hell out of them. They have the funniest stories, very exciting stories about back in the day, and these actors that would hop from Hollywood to a regional production somewhere and be touring around, and it's just they're so steeped in that American history of the theater. And coming out of Adler, that's exactly what I was expecting, and I learned the hard way that those days are largely bygone, in my experience. And I was trying to then make my segue into film and TV, and I, like you, realized that I hadn't had that finishing of the foundations of what we'd experienced in those 2-3 years at Stella Adler, and been able to just slightly tweak and understand the kind of business nuances of what we'd learned to adapt that for the different filmed mediums. And I'm only starting to really, since moving from New York, I did a little bit of student filming and some industrials in New York, a couple commercials. But then when I was in New Mexico, doing slightly larger indie films that I was leading in, some other commercials for TV. And then in Hollywood now, I'm really having much more of an opportunity to learn from myself and through these different workshops, and now looking at the film stalwarts, these actors that have been in the film and TV world. They're just a little further along than I am, or they're greatly experienced actors. I get to learn from them, ask them these very technical questions about the craft and how they've adapted their own conservatory experience or life experiences to this specific medium and how that's changing. I mean, so many things are changing now. I think that's why drama schools largely are finding it difficult to keep up.
Right. Yeah, because there are so many other ways, and there's like, even if you think of, like YouTube stars are kind of getting the lead series in TV shows now. And it's like there are so many different ways of creating a platform, and people just want to see something that's real, and drama school doesn't necessarily give you that. I mean, I had a teacher who said to me a few weeks ago, the problem is that we have as actors is that we're competing with a YouTube video of like an actual drunk person falling off a chair, and that's like the most fascinating thing to watch. And so how do you try and be as real as this, as like these really accessible videos that everyone could just watch in a heartbeat,
Yeah, I haven't thought about that perspective of YouTube. That makes a lot of sense, actually, being able to tap so readily into real life. So now we have like a higher standard of authenticity.
Yeah, I think it's harder because there are so many real people with videos that go viral on YouTube that I think that actors do have to be that much more truthful, Like, we have to try and be even more authentic than before, in a way.
Yeah, because so many people now have that firsthand account of somebody. They don't have to guess at it. They don't have to watch it and say, "Yeah, that's probably what it looks like," or, "Oh, I'm getting an insight into something." They have that insight now. So many people can just bring up that insight onto their phone.
And with Instagram as well, it's like Instagram, Facebook, Instagram stories. Like, there are so many, Snapchat. Like, there is so much entertainment is just so easily accessible now that I do think it's harder for actors.
That's so interesting to look at it, though, from that that artistic challenge as opposed to that that marketing product. Because I think a lot of actors do talk about competing with social media influencers and growing their accounts as a businessman, as opposed to trying to emulate as an artist someone else's experience.
Right. Yeah, because influencers are just themselves. They're their own product. And with acting, it's like the more you can be yourself in an audition, and the more authentically you can connect to the character, but coming from a place of realness and truth, like, the more appealing that is to watch.
It just occurred to me, going back a little bit to your experience on the off-Broadway production of A Midsummer Night's Dream at the Theater for New Audience. I saw that was filmed. Julie Taymor actually directed the film version of your stage play, and I wondered how you adapted that for film, and if that started getting your feet wet and you started acclimating yourself to the Hollywood film industry at that point in your career.
Yeah, that definitely helped. I mean, I remember as soon as we found out that it would be made into a film, Julie Taymor spoke to me and said, listen, I know you've never done anything before. I know you've never been in front of a camera before. So tomorrow I want to kind of do a training with, like a 3-hour training with you to kind of, get you up to speed with what I want for this film. And that was kind of incredible. I like having a on-camera class with Julie Taymor was crazy. So I spent kind of 3 hours with her, and she kind of talked me through what she wanted. And I think it was a challenge because it was a filmed version of the stage production, but it was shot over 5 days. And the more intimate scenes were shot when the theatre was closed during the day. So it was kind of close-ups, and we were mic'd, and we had to kind of really bring the acting down. But then the productions would also be filmed at night. So if you watch the movie, it's a total blend between the two, which I think it actually translates really well. Like, I think they did a really good job with that. But yeah, it definitely... it definitely made acting in front of a camera slightly less scary. But like now when I look back at it, I just see like the tension in my face and like the fear in my eyes. Like I'm trying to keep it together and do the scenes, but I can just tell that I was pretty terrified. And yeah, I think it was, suddenly there was this massive film crew, and Julie Taymor now directing me in a kind of a film. It was incredible and terrifying at the same time. And I think I was so lucky because I had been working with her for so long, and it was kind of such a long rehearsal process, and she knew how green I was and that I just graduated school and that I had no idea what I was doing in front of a camera. So she was very kind with me.
Did she offer you any techniques that you then brought to auditions and brought to movies that you started making in Quantico?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so, it's so much easier being on a set than auditioning. And it's just so, I think auditioning is a whole other beast. I think like audition techniques, I think that just takes practice. And I think another way to get better in the room is to do a ton of self-tapes. Like now, I do so many self-tapes. Like so many things that cast in LA or London or, Canada. Like it's crazy, like the amount of self-tapes that we get. And the more you practice at home, I think the easier it becomes in the room as well. And at home, you can really kind of experiment with eyeline and how to kind of move your eyes and where to look and when to look down. And I think you can learn so much through self-tapes. I personally much prefer self-tapes now. I think when you're in the room, it can feel so rushed, and it can depend on your reader or how they're doing for time, or there are so many factors that contribute to your audition. Whereas when you're at home, you can literally like do it as many times as you like. You can, change outfits, you can warm up before each take, it just becomes something fun that you can do with your friend. And I think part of the problem with auditioning in the room is that a lot of the time we get overtaken by nerves, and you don't get that when you're doing a self-tape at home.
And I think you're speaking a little bit to that experimentation and how much you can learn between the takes. When you're in an audition and you're face-to-face with somebody, it's more of maybe a live performance that you can't exactly learn from. You're just playing and seeing how it's received.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Of course there are benefits to both. I haven't actually booked anything yet off a tape. Like I've always booked things being in the room. But I definitely enjoy doing tapes more. Like I feel a lot more nervous when I'm going in the room. So,
what project do you think has really cemented your place in the film industry now?
Film industry? Well, I did a film called The Wild Wedding a few years ago, and that was actually my first film role. And it's a movie about a retired actress who is marrying a writer, and her ex-husband comes to the wedding, and their whole family is kind of staying at this estate, and it's a romantic comedy. And I was playing Rose, who's Patrick Stewart's daughter, in the romantic comedy, and the cast was incredible. It was Glenn Close, John Malkovich, and Patrick Stewart, which was, playing his daughter was just kind of a dream come true. And so that was my first role, and that was also the first thing I'd read that I could really see myself playing. She was British. She was kind of really like, I guess like snobby and like a party girl, and just a lot of fun. And like as soon as I read it, I felt like, oh, this would be so much. It would be so much fun to play this role, and I'm not auditioning for someone American because, of course, I have a whole other barrier, which is the American accent. So to be able to audition for something with a British accent was, it was just kind of such a relief. So already when I went in the room and I met the director and the casting director, I felt a lot more relaxed just because I was doing it in my own accent. So that was kind of my first film experience. And I felt like that was definitely something which could get me into more casting rooms. Like I felt like as soon as I did that, it was kind of easier for my agents to submit me for things and for people to want to see me. And yeah, I would say that definitely opened a lot of doors for me in the auditioning. Yeah, so definitely that. What was I saying? Wild Wedding. Yeah, so definitely doing Wild Wedding opened a lot of doors. Opened some doors for me. In the sense,
did that open the door to you auditioning for the TV series Quantico?
Yeah, I did some things in between that. I did Pericles that Trevor Nunn directed, and I played Marina, so that was another Shakespeare play. And then I did a kind of more an independent film called Ask for Jane, and then I did another off-Broadway play. So there was kind of a lot leading up, like a few, kind of some steps leading up to Quantico. And then I auditioned for Quantico, and that was my first television credit. So that was, but I also, there is a part of me that also feels like I don't know, like I'd met the casting director once before from Quantico, but I hadn't had like a great audition for her. Like I think they were looking for someone to play this English guy's sister, and I think again like things just lined up. Like they were looking for maybe a specific type of look, a specific accent, a specific type of energy, and I think it just kind of things just lined up, and I booked it. But I don't know if it was, I don't think they'd even really seen any of my previous work. I really think it was just kind of I think people always want the person they believe is the best for the job. And that's why I'm skeptical to think that, your previous credits matter all that much. Like I think people care, but we're not defined by our resumes. I do think that it just depends on the audition you give.
But it allows you to be in the mix. You being known by the casting director, it allows an agent or a manager to submit you with a little bit more veracity. for the fact that you have been booked by others, that you have this proven track record, you've been building this trust. There could be the perfect role out there that an actor could be trained to do, could walk in the door and bring his essence to. But if he's not on a casting director's radar, a production company's radar, then that opportunity passes that actor by. So I can see where you're saying that things have lined up for you, but you've also set yourself up to succeed, for people to know you, to bring you in and give you a try.
Aww. Well, I think a lot of that is also an agent's job. I think that if you have an agent, it's their job to get you in these rooms. And if you just don't have that many credits, I think that a lot of that is pitching you harder. Everyone had no credits at some point. And I think if you have an agent who believes in you and who thinks that you would be right for something, like it's their job to really push for you. Like I don't think that's really in our control. Of course, if I didn't have an agent, I wouldn't have gotten the role in I would not have got the role in Quantico for sure. But that's something that...
Or if you had the wrong agent that didn't believe in you, didn't believe that you were worth pushing or could pull off that role.
True. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's true.
Have you been to Hollywood? You haven't. I know you haven't relocated here.
I have not.
Okay.
No, but I really want to. I would love to come. I have a lot of friends who are out there, and I would love to, book something that films out there. I mean, that would be like a total dream. I do love New York, though, and I love the community that I have here. I'm really good friends with some of the girls who are actually in the year below us at Stella Adler, and I feel like that, having, like, supporting each other and kind of celebrating each other's success, and then being there when everything is kind of awful, like that, I think is really what keeps me sane. And also to have a community that you can say, I'm not doing anything today. Do you have time to read a play? And then just getting together and reading a play. Or I'm feeling really shitty, like, let's go and see a show and get inspired, Or I didn't get the 20th thing I've auditioned for in the last month. Let's talk it out, Or let's write something together and let's create something. And I think that is something that I'm really interested in. I produced my first short along with 3 other friends. My friend Andre wrote it, and another friend Carter directed it and was the DP, and we all kind of produced it together. And then Theodora Moran, who's in the year below us, she was in it, as well as Eleanor, who was also in the year below, and we kind of produced it. And that was such an interesting experience to kind of also be on the other side, and it felt really good to have some more control and, to be able to write the kind of character that you wanted to play. And it was just a little 6-minute sketch, but it was really eye-opening, I think, for all of us. Like, okay, we could do this more, and we should do this more. And it's fulfilling in a whole other way. Obviously, you never know, if anyone's going to see it or what we're going to do with it, but it was really fun to do. So that's definitely
sometimes
something
that's beside the point, right?
Right.
It's almost that having that validity, having that support structure, and championing each other within each other's artistic environments. There's something to the health of that as an artist and as a human being, as we continue to move forward in this very tumultuous landscape.
Yes, totally. Yeah, and having a support system, I think, is absolutely key.
Yeah. How else do you ground yourself on a weekly basis and try to plug in to this ever-changing film industry?
Well, I don't think I'm the most grounded person. I try to, meditate as much as I can. I try to do, gratitude lists and go to yoga and read and kind of to stay as centered as possible. I also try and trust that it's going to be okay. Like, I don't think that I'm the most proactive person in the sense that I don't really send out postcards or newsletters or updates, and I think that's an amazing way to do it. I just don't think that I'm very good at like the business side of the industry. I just don't think I kind of, it makes me nervous. Even, going to parties or premieres when you're supposed to network, and I just can't, I'm just not very good at that. It doesn't, I always feel like it's fake, even though it's not, like, you genuinely want to meet people. Just for me, it doesn't, I've never really been able to do that. So I try and, I also just sometimes try and like have fun and think that acting isn't the most important thing in my life. I think that we can get so caught up in the desperation of wanting to work that we forget how many other things you can be doing with your time. So I try and concentrate on other things that make me happy.
So important. You have to have all these life experiences.
Yeah, it can't just all be about acting. To bring to roles as well, but also your happiness is more important, and not feeling depressed because you haven't got a role. And it is like it's a tricky cycle, because the more upset you get that you haven't booked anything, the more desperate you seem, and the more desperation you bring into an audition, the less likely you are to get the job. So I think there's something about managing to stay as grounded and as happy as possible when you aren't working, so then you're also bringing a better energy into the room when you're auditioning. No one wants to smell desperation on you, which is so tricky, because of course we are all desperate to get the jobs, and the less you work, the more you want to work. So yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. That's why, like, as soon as one person gets one thing, it's like suddenly they're constantly working,
Mm-hmm.
Because they have like this...
It builds momentum.
Yeah, it builds momentum, but it also builds confidence. And it builds confidence when you go into your auditions, and it's like you just go in with a different attitude than someone who isn't in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're bringing that to the podcast, that realization of your own authenticity, that, certain aspects of marketing, of the business, aren't necessarily for you, because you're just putting your art out there. You're just living your training. You're just being part of the support structure that supports you, as opposed to manipulating your career in any way. Some people can find healthier ways to do that, or more authentic ways to do that. But if it is not you, if it does not resonate with you, it's something that you don't have to do. You can just simply be so good that people don't ignore you, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, and I think for me it's also, I just want to be as happy as I can. And like, for me, networking and all of that stuff, it just doesn't make me happy. Like, I don't even think it's not even about acting. Like, I think that's a whole other aspect, like at this, I want to try and have a career and yet stay as grounded and like content as possible, because there are so many people who are unhappy doing this. And of course I have those moments, and I think that's why now I'm speaking from a place of, I'm just going to do what makes me feel good. And some of that as well is starting to pass on auditions that I don't want to do. Like if it's a role that I really don't connect to, I'm just not going to audition. I don't want to audition for it. I used to feel so awful, and I still, of course, do. Like, I feel a little bad, but I also know that I'm going to feel worse if I go into a room and do an audition that I'm not happy with, or, you know, just end up feeling shitty about myself.
I think that's so honest. And I think we all need to know that a little bit more about ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, why are we doing this? What are we really in it for the long haul for?
And like we can't forget our self-worth, you know. And I think our life is so much bigger than acting, and I think that's kind of something that helps me with every choice that I'm making. Is I personally feel happier when acting isn't 99% of my life. You know, when my happiness doesn't depend on whether or not I book a job. Like, we have to find happiness within us whether or not we ever work again. Like, that's what I believe.
As actors, we're more than just our credits. That's become much more profound by the end of this conversation.
Yeah, no, I just think it's so hard, and we have to make it as bearable as we can, and for everyone it's different. You know, I have friends who, for example, really like the business aspect and really like to have control, and so, you know, they email their managers every day, you know, requesting to be submitted for various roles. And for me, for my personality, that just doesn't work. And I think it takes time to get to know yourself inside this industry. And once you do, I think it can be liberating in a way. And of course, maybe you lose opportunities. Maybe, you know, if I had the breakdowns and I saw every single role that was being cast, like, maybe I would have more auditions, but I also think it would just drive me crazy, and I would not be happy. I think I would feel my self-worth would go down. I would just feel horrible. So I think in a way, you know, for me this works. For other people it doesn't.
That's an excellent sentiment to end on.
Thank you. I hope this made sense. I feel like couldn't talk.
It made a lot of sense.
It
honestly.
did. If it's awful, let's do it. We can do it again.
No. This was perfect. This was just where I've been having experiences with a lot of different filmmakers recently, and they're all expressing their dissatisfaction in different ways, emotional ways, physical ways.
Yeah.
You know, just trying to strike that balance, trying to juggle all aspects of their life while pushing their career, and again in so many different paths is so it's so deflating. You know, that energy dissipates into so many different avenues.
It does.
And you know, obviously, right? There's so many different paths forward, and that can be liberating only when you have a plan of attack. Mm-hmm. When you can channel those energies. But you got to leave the majority of those energies inside your person to light you up. Otherwise, that flame flickers within yourself. And how can you go out into the world and be that shining light if you're not taking care of your own inner brilliance?
Right. Totally.
I think that's what you're speaking to, that happiness, that contentedness, and finding that unique balance for the individual artist.
Right. Totally. I am.
That makes me so happy. And I coming out of this conversation, I am really inspired, and I'm so happy, Lily. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Oh my gosh, this is so nice. Thank you. I hope it wasn't too late to have.
Thanks for listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening.